Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. You can also go to snarkymoviereviews.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. Remember, this show is completely free and independent. All I ask is that you jump over to iTunes and give me a review. This is a very sad, sort of buddy movie. The guys never had a chance. Today's movie is Requiem for a Heavyweight, 1962. The movie tells the story of a boxer, his trainer, and his manager. The boxer is the primary character. Actor Anthony Quinn shot this film during a 2-month break in the filming of Lawrence of Arabia, 1962. The story and the screenplay were written by Rod Serling, 1924 to 1975. Serling was known for his horror television show, The Night Gallery, 1970 to 73, and Twilight Zone, 1959 to 64. He was also involved in the writing of Planet of the Apes, 1968, Twilight Zone the Movie, 1983, and 7 Days in May, 1964. On to the actors. Anthony Quinn played the pugilist Louis Mountain Rivera. Quinn was covered in episode 31, Warlock, 1959. Jackie Gleason played Mace Rennick, Mountain's manager. John Herbert Jackie Gleason was born in 1916 in Brooklyn, New York.
I'm walking here!
When Gleason was 9 years old, his father abandoned the family. This led Gleason to spend time on the streets and in pool halls. He never finished high school and started working at theaters. His mother died tragically in 1935. Gleason moved in with another comic and got his first professional comedic work shortly after. Gleason worked his way up until he was finally working at Club 18, where he used his acerbic wit to insult the guest. Jack Warner saw Gleason in the club and started him in the movies. Early movies include Navy Blues, 1941, All Through the Night, 1941 with Humphrey Bogart, Tramp, 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 1942, and a small bit with Edward G. Robinson in Larceny Incorporated, 1942. However, Gleason did not take Hollywood by storm. Gleason returned to work in nightclubs until he got his first big break. In 1949, he was cast as Riley in the television show The Life of Riley. The show only lasted 1 season. Following the cancellation, he began working on a television variety show that would later become The Jackie Gleason Show, 1952 to 1959. This is where he developed his trademark, and away we go. His next hit show was The Honeymooners, 1955 to 56, where he played a beloved verbal, if not physical, abuser. One actress that was part of the skit was not selected for the show because her name was listed in the Red Channel, a book containing the names of suspected communists. Gleason was on a few variety shows and made jazz mood music albums. His first big film was The Hustler, 1961, playing the role of pool player Minnesota Fats opposite Paul Newman and George C. Scott. He played a heel in Requiem for a Heavyweight, 1962. Among other films, he was in a strange buddy film, Soldier in the Rain, 1963, with Steve McQueen. Skipping many lesser films, he was in Don't Drink the Water, 1969, where his family was accused of spying on the mythical country of Bulgaria. Gleason rose in popularity with his role as redneck sheriff Buford T. Justice in Smokey and the Bandit, 1977. Unfortunately, he was in Bandit 2, 1980, and Bandit 3, 1983, and The Sting 2, 1983. He was pretty good in The Toy, 1982. His final movie was Nothing in Common, 1986, with Tom Hanks. By the time Gleason made his last movie, he was dying from colon cancer. He died in Florida in 1987. Mickey Rooney played Army, Mountain's trainer. Mickey Rooney was born in 1920 in Brooklyn, New York.
I'm walking here!
As a baby, he participated in his parents' vaudeville act. Apparently never having formal training, he was turning up in short films by 1926. His first full-length film appears to be My Pal the King, 1932. He continued in films, playing mostly children, until his amazing performance as Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream, 1935. He hit a lucky streak with A Family Affair, 1937, when he started playing beloved teenager Andy Hardy. He made almost 20 films as Andy Hardy. He played a tough kid in Boys Town, 1938, with Spencer Tracy. He was awarded a Juvenile Academy Award for this role. The young actor was teamed with Judy Garland in a series of musicals that include Babes in Arms, 1939, Strike Up the Band, 1940, Babes on Broadway, 1941, and Girl Crazy, 1943. During the same period, he worked with Elizabeth Taylor in National Velvet, 1944. That year, he joined the military and worked in special services, never to be confused with special forces. Rooney returned from the military after about 21 months. He was still able to play Andy Hardy in Love Laughs at Andy Hardy, 1946, but he had some better roles in films such as Killer McCoy, 1947, and Words and Music, 1948. For some reason, he was cast as a Coke bottle glasses wearing Mr. Yanoshi in Breakfast at Tiffany's, 1961. Big mistake. In Requiem for a Heavyweight, 1962, Rooney showed his talent and range. For his work in The Black Stallion, 1979, Rooney again showed what an amazing talent he was. He was nominated for a Best Supporting Actor Oscar. Following this, he returned to stage work. Rooney was in 4 sitcoms, with the best being The Mickey Rooney Show, 1954-55. In total, he was nominated for 4 Oscars. In 1983, he was given an honorary Oscar for 50 years of versatile film performance. But Rooney was not done yet. He was great as Gus in Night at the Museum 2006 with Ben Stiller, and The Muppets 2011 with Amy Adams. He returned as Gus in Night at the Museum 3 2014. Sadly, Rooney was a victim of elder abuse, but he stood up to it and found relief through the Superior Court. This great actor died in 2014. Julie Harris played social worker with a heart of gold, Grace Miller. Harris was born in 1925 in Michigan. Coming from a well-to-do family, her performing talents were encouraged. She went to Yale Drama School for a year and attended the New York School of Drama and was one of the early members of the acting studio. She debuted on Broadway in 1945 at the age of 19. Harris did well in stage work, and based on her performance in The Member of the Wedding, she and Brandon DeWild were cast in the film The Member of the Wedding, 1952. Harris received her only Oscar nomination for this role. Harris continued to be successful on stage and occasionally took the film role of the play she was acting in, such as I Am a Camera, 1955. She was great with James Dean in East of Eden, 1955. She mixed stage and film, turning out movies such as Requiem for a Heavyweight, 1962, The Haunting, 1963, Hamlet, 1964, Harper, 1966, Reflections in a Golden Eye, 1967, The Bell Jar, 1979, Home for the Holidays, 1972, and Gorillas in the Mist, 1988. She was equally active on television. Suffering from poor health, Harris faced breast cancer in 1981 and had a stroke in 2001 and 2010. Harris died in 2013 of congestive heart failure in Massachusetts at the age of 87. Boxer Jack Dempsey played himself in this movie. Boxer Muhammad Ali played himself, but he was Cassius Clay at the time. Argentine boxer Alex Middeff was shown being beaten by Cassius Clay. Story: Boxer Mountain Rivera, Anthony Quinn, loses a fight to a younger fighter, Cassius Clay, before he was Muhammad Ali. They show clips of the Clay fight against Argentine boxer Alex Middeff. Of course, back in those days, Ali was light and pretty, and no one could lay a glove on him. The first part of the movie is shown from Mountain's point of view, and it's warped and surreal. When he hears a bell ring for another fight, he jumps into action. They change to regular view after you see Mountain's mangled face for the first time. His 2 friends get him into the locker room. Shortly, a doctor, Lou Gilbert, tells Mace Rennick, Jackie Gleason, that if Mountain fights again, he could go blind from a detached retina. A detached retina happens when fluid leaks out from a hole or a tear, like when you make a living getting your head pounded in.
You had no business in there, Mace. You were hungry or something?
What do you mean, hungry? 1952, he was number 5.
1952. When was that, Mace? Last Thursday?
A couple of good rights to that eye. You can buy him a tin cup and some pencils.
Well, maybe it doesn't have to happen that way, Mace.
Maybe someday he'll bang his head on a bathroom door and bleed to death.
Either way, Mace, it could happen either way. No more. This is it.
I got nothing scheduled for him. He can rest.
He can rest up the rest of his life.
What's the matter with you? He's 17 years in this business. Suddenly he gets a cut. I gotta put him out the pasture.
It isn't one cut and it isn't suddenly. It's 17 years of cuts. How long do you expect him to go on?
He looks good in that ring. He's sharp. Sometimes he's plenty sharp. He's a pro.
That's probably what kept him alive.
Army, Mickey Rooney, takes care of Mountain and wakes him up with smelling salts the doctor left. While Mountain is in the shower, Army and Maish have a little spat because Maish is up to something. We also find out that Army is a former fighter turned cut man. Mountain has been a fighter for 17 years. Maish and Army break the news to Mountain. At first he doesn't believe it, but when Army tells it to him again, he believes. Mountain is crushed. Mountain wonders what he will do for work. They did a good job with the makeup and Mountain didn't look too good, something like a line from a Simon and Garfunkel song, and he carried the reminder of every glove that laid him down or cut him till he cried out. Having squandered his youth in the fight game, Mountain has no skills or talents that he can use to support himself. The three men have been more than a team. They have also been friends and drinking buddies. But Maish, like a typical huckster, has bet a lot of money on the fight, and now he owes a mean gangster named Ma Green, Madam Spivey. Ma has a gang of big thugs to collect, and one of the thugs is played by Michael Conrad, most recently of Hill Street Blues 1981 to 84. So Maish will get his head bashed in if he doesn't pay. The thugs are waiting for Maish outside of the locker room. While the thugs follow Maish, they pass Ma Green, wearing her hat low, giving off a Boris and Natasha vibe. Maish, who is a rather large man, makes a run for it. The thugs and Ma Green catch him in the now empty boxing arena. They turn on the lights and it seems to be Maish's turn in the ring. Maish has called Ma Green and said his fighter Mountain would not go more than 4 rounds against Clay.
I don't want this complicated. Don't make no long speech. Just tell me. Didn't you phone me and tell me your boy wouldn't last more than 4 rounds? Didn't you make a personal guarantee?
He was up against Clay. 2 rounds, 3 rounds. At the outside 4, but never 7 rounds, Ma. Never 7.
Last question, Maishi. Didn't you have us put up a bet for you of $1,500? And then on your word, we put up a bundle of our own? And aren't you gonna pay us back now, Maish?
Certainly I'm gonna pay you. I'll give you the $1,500. I just need a couple of months.
This was a bet, not a bank loan.
She lost not only Maish's money, but a bundle of her own money as well. The thugs give Maish an off-camera beating in the ring. Mountain and Army go out looking for jobs. The first one is for a movie usher. You know, the guys that used to walk around with flashlights, not the teenager that tears your ticket now. But Mountain never had a chance for the job because he was too big to fit into the uniform. Maish is out trying to hustle up the money while Mountain and Army go to the employment office. Mountain wants to go drinking because it is taking too long, but his name is finally called. His worker is Grace Miller, Julie Harris, who is pretty good at her job but seems to have a soft spot for hard cases. She puts him at ease by not judging him. She is fascinated that he was a prize fighter. Mountain talks about his eye problem and she is determined to help. She tries to talk to him about special needs jobs and he leaves angrily. That night, Mountain wanders the streets until he passes the arena where they are pasting over his poster. Back at the room, Maish and Army are playing cards. Maish is being a cranky ass because he's worried about the money. Army is worried about Mountain. Maish gets a call from wrestling promoter Pernelli, Stanley Adams. Army gets mad because Maish wants Mountain to wrestle. Army knows this will be degrading to the washed-up fighter. Maish is conflicted by his love for Mountain and his need to make money. After Army leaves, Maish starts packing, but is stopped when the phone rings. It's Ma Green warning him not to try and run. Grace shows up at a dive boxer hangout. It's full of pugs of all ages and shapes. The bartender tells Grace that unescorted ladies are not permitted. She asks for Mountain and the bartender retrieves him. They get a table and she tells him about a summer camp job that might be great for him. The owners of the camp are in town and Grace wants to set up a meeting for that evening. She has a beer with him in the dive. They have a nice visit and Mountain talks about how much he owes Maish. Mountain gets a little too exuberant telling a boxing story.
You know, I once fought a guy named Jazzo, Elmer Jazzo. And you know what? He looked just like my own man. He was a spitting image of him, you know. So, I couldn't hit him. And so anyway, second round, I go out and I still, I'm just jabbing away, kind of easy. And all of a sudden, he comes at me. He comes at me. He's got me up against the ropes. And he's giving me the elbow. He's giving me the legs, and he's butting me. And I just can't cover him up. I notice every time he shoots his left hand, he drops his right. So I throw.
Grace gets a cab to her place, and Mountain goes back to wait for the call about the appointment. Before Mountain gets back to the apartment, Army comes in and sees that Pirelli is waiting with Maish. Mountain is on top of the world about his job interview, but Maish and Pirelli pitch the wrestling idea. Pirelli wants him to dress as an Indian and blow smoke on the referee with his peace pipe. Mountain thinks it is degrading and doesn't want to do it. Maish pulls the old "you owe me" bit. Mountain doesn't want to be considered a stumble bum, when that is, in fact, what he has become. The call comes in from Grace, and she tells him where the job interview is to be held. Maish tells Army that Mountain has won and he has lost. He then sends Army out for some sandwiches. Maish takes whiskey into Mountain while Army is out. He then takes him out drinking at Jack Dempsey's place, and they have a drink with the former champ. Maish is trying to get Mountain drunk so he can sabotage the interview. Army finds him and sends Mountain to the interview. Mountain is drunk at the hotel and gets confused about the room number. He starts wandering around calling out the man's name and banging on doors. He crashes into a room service cart and the noise brings Grace and the camp owners out of their room. When Mountain sees them, he runs away. Grace shows up at Mountain's place and she starts chewing on him pretty hard about messing up the appointment. Grace asks him why he threw away the job and he says he was kidding himself about the summer camp job. She sees that he is ashamed to be a wrestler, but Mountain says he will do anything for Maish. As Grace tries to motivate Mountain, he begins to kiss her hand. They start kissing, but when he pulls her on the bed, she reacts badly. He sends her away. Mountain stops her to return her scarf, and she kisses him on the cheek as she leaves. Going down the stairs, she runs into Maish. She rips into Maish, and he gets pretty sarcastic. When Maish calls Mountain an ape, Grace slaps him. Then Maish gets serious and says it's too late to give Mountain dreams.
You want to help him, Miss Miller? I'll tell you how you can help him. Leave him alone. If you gotta say anything to him, tell him you pity him. Tell him you feel so sorry for him you could cry. But don't con him. Don't tell him he can be a counselor in a boys' camp. He's been chasing ghosts so long he'll believe anything. Any kind of a ghost. Championship belt. Pretty girl. Maybe just 24 hours without an ache in his body. Doesn't make any difference. It all passed him.
I just thought that maybe the next thing he wanted he ought to get. That would only be fair.
Maish would make all of his dreams come true if he could. Mountain is in the dressing room wearing the Indian costume. Pirelli laughs right in his face, not knowing the effect it will have. Another promoter brings in a young boxer that wants to work with Maish, but he tells him to come back later. Mountain has a little bit of dignity left, and he refuses to go into the wrestling match. Maish gets angry and tells of the bet and how he bet that Mountain would fall before the 4th round. Army calls him a fink and walks out. Mountain says he was never ashamed of his fighting until Maish bet against him. 2 of Ma Green's thugs come in and call Mountain Hiawatha. He mops the floor with them. Pirelli comes in and says he will get Maish's license pulled, and then Ma Green says her thugs are going to destroy Maish physically. Mountain agrees to wrestle. Maish makes a plea to keep the team together and get a new boxer. However, what they had is gone. Mountain climbs into the ring, and the crowd is mocking him feverishly. Army stands in the aisle crying. Mountain starts war whooping to feed the crowd's frenzy. World famous short summary. Trio of buddies have a spat. I hope you enjoyed today's show. As always, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. I'm on Twitter and Facebook and most other social media. Please take the time to jump over to iTunes and give me a review. It really helps the show get found. Beware the Moors.
Let's be frank. You never wanted to give me a review on iTunes. You come to me this day, on the day of my daughter's wedding, and you ask me, give me a movie review. But you never come to my house in friendship. You never wanted to drink coffee with me. Had you gone to iTunes and given me a review, this day I would give you a movie review.